Toska is a band that has gone from playing edgy alternative metal to becoming a household name in the progressive metal scene. Their music has often been described as anthemic and cinematic, combining crushing riffs and drum parts with atmospheric interludes that wouldn't be out of place in a thriller film score. In this video, I will be doing a deep dive into the history of the band, leading to their recent unfortunate breakup in an attempt to compile a more coherent framework on which they created their music. Welcome to our biography and history of Toska. Toska was officially formed in 2013 after the breakup of the members' previous band ChasinJade. The band consists of guitarist Rabea, drummer Ben Meinl and bassist Dave Hollingworth. The trio initially started creating music together in 2004 with ChasinJade, which Rabea has described as a teenage passion project. Rabea and Dave initially met at Leeds College of Music, where Dave heard Rabea playing in a room and asked if he wanted to jam. While there, they met a singer called Charlie Robinson and formed ChasinJade. After 4 or 5 months, Charlie introduced them to Ben, who also joined the band. Rabea recalls the first time playing with Ben and Dave, saying, "It seemed the three of us just had that mutual connection between us." The music of ChasinJade would end up being a far cry from the music Rabea, Ben and Dave would create in the years to come. The sound is more comparable to bands such as Incubus, Rage Against the Machine and Limp Bizkit. Here's a small example of the music they would end up releasing onto YouTube, MySpace and SoundCloud.
In mysterious ways, it's
Ben had initially applied to study German at Cambridge University and was accepted, but dropped out soon after to pursue playing with ChasinJade.
And it was a big decision, and it was scary. I didn't really know whether it would work in the long term, but I guess I didn't really think about it. I just had absolute faith that, like, you got to follow what excites you. And at that moment in my life, there was nothing more exciting than playing music.
In the years that followed, Rabea, Ben, Dave and Charlie moved into a house together with the goal of trying to make a living playing in the band. They each worked full-time to fund the band. Rabea worked in debt collection, Dave worked in a warehouse, Ben sold doormats and Charlie worked at a call centre. After 4 years, Ben grew tired of working full-time and vocalised that he wanted to get a degree in music. Everyone else agreed and they moved down south to attend the Academy of Contemporary Music. The initial purpose of going there was to network with people and dedicate time solely to the band. Unfortunately, ChasinJade would play their last gig on the 4th of February 2012 at the Boiler Room in Guildford, before Charlie would leave the band due to illness. With ChasinJade disbanded, Rabea, Ben and Dave were looking for new musical avenues to explore. One of these new projects was called Toesland, which the trio left shortly afterwards due to the financial unviability and the lack of passion for the style of music they were playing. Around the same time, Rabea met Rob Chapman in a pub and formed Dorje along with Ben and Dave. The sound of Dorje would be more akin to what the world could expect to hear from Toska in the next few years, and so it's safe to say at this point the trio had refined their sound and developed upon their previous work with ChasinJade. After forming Dorje, Rabea, Ben and Dave graduated from ACM and performed together as a trio. They played some ChasinJade songs, as well as some unreleased tracks, which would end up making their way into albums they would later release as Toska. Rabea even called this performance the Birth of Toska. Since their new bandmate Rob Chapman owned a guitar company, aptly named Chapman Guitars, Rabea and Dave began working with him on designing their own signature guitar and bass. These would end up being released in 2013 and 2014 respectively. They would keep working closely with Rob in the years to come to refine their own sound and to promote his brand of guitars. The original runs of these guitars are now discontinued, but were very popular when they were being made. They have since released new signature guitars for various price brackets in an attempt to attract as many customers as possible. For the next year or so, nothing much was happening. All work on Dorje was halted so that everyone could adjust to living in the real world, so to say, and earn a living by themselves. At this time, Ben started work on his music education course Musicism, and Rabea started working on his own projects. Rabea said that he felt unfulfilled in his current musical avenues and so considered finding new musicians to write with. He told Ben and Dave, and they said they felt similarly. The trio then started working on material as Toska. They initially interviewed vocalists to join them, but according to Rabea, it just didn't happen. Plus they had experience with singers asking to change what they thought were the best parts of the songs, so in the end they pursued Toska as a three-piece instrumental ensemble. Rabea has cited bands such as Animals as Leaders, Intervals and Pliny for the inspiration to pursue playing instrumental progressive metal. In 2015, Dorje released their first EP entitled Catalyst, which was recorded and produced by the band in Dave's home studio nicknamed The Cove. Throughout this time, each member of the band had been more active on YouTube, regularly posting updates and vlogs surrounding the band, as well as their own personal projects. This helped them gain a footing in the scene on YouTube at the time, which in turn aided Catalyst reaching number 1 on the UK rock and metal chart.
Thank you for everyone that's got the EP or listened to it or just said nice things about the band. Really, 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 really amazing for you guys to support us like that. I mean, let me just show you this the screenshot that I've got here. So we are number 1 in the UK rock charts. That is probably the most surreal thing I've ever seen with regards to anything related to me whatsoever to do with anything.
Following this success, Dorje went on a UK tour to support the release of the album and vlogged a large portion of it, which led to them exponentially growing their online and in-person following. This also gave viewers a unique fly-on-the-wall-like view into the world of being a touring musician, which was quite unique in the progressive rock and metal scene at the time. Over the next year, both Dorje and Toska would continue working on their music whilst engaging with their audiences online. Only 3 months after the release of Catalyst, Toska would announce their debut EP, Ode to the Author, and with it release an hour-and-a-half long documentary detailing the recording and mixing process of the album. This gave viewers an insight very few get into the process of creating their favourite albums. On top of this, the entire album was recorded, mixed and self-released in just 10 days. Since this video is primarily about Toska, I will be focusing on the musical content of their tracks more so than the content of the trio's work with Dorje or ChasinJade. With each of the tracks from Ode to the Author, I'll be breaking them down into their core themes and using musical examples to provide some insight into the effect that they have on the album's sound and mood. So starting with the first track, Chalk Teeth. As the name suggests, the first track is gritty and hits you right in the face with the opening snare and floor tom hit. There really isn't any messing about getting started here. It's become a staple of Toska's sound to mellow out sections just before building it straight back up where you don't expect it. There really isn't much breathing room for the character if we imagine one. It's like they're stuck in a trance and every now and again they break out into a manic fit. This fast-paced section leads us back around to the opening riff and into the next track entitled Chasm. The clock-like snare drum of the intro tells us that our manic character is here to stay, with the state of mania deteriorating in real time. This is the first time in the opening 2 tracks that we get to soak in the atmosphere, and even then the guitar chords and chromatic movement unsettles the listener. This almost primal pedalled rhythm then leads us out into the first atmospheric track of the album entitled Phoneme. The chaotic droning fuzz bass and guitar sound that can only be described as the screams of an android eventually mellows out into some atmospheric guitar chords and feedback, a welcome change from the wailing soundscape that prefaced it, which then nicely leads into our fourth track, Illumo. The tapped harmonics in the guitars are held down by a stable partnership between the drums and bass, allowing the listener to drift into the dreamy and relaxed soundscape crafted for them. This leads into the main motif of the piece, keeping the melancholy mood that has been shown through the mania of Chalk Teeth and Chasm, but instead channeled through somber guitar arpeggios. Our character builds into one final frenzy again before collapsing into what can only be described as a triumphant reprieve. The climbing guitar melody leads us back to the main motif and out into the second atmospheric track entitled Anthropocene. Utilising samples of what sounds like doctors talking, along with the sounds of space and reverse symbols, a monologue from Alan Watts carries through the soundscape as if from the perspective of our character, bound to a hospital bed. This really shows one of Toska's main influences in Carnival, and particularly their album Sound Awake. The final track, Change, utilises similar samples of speech to paint the dystopian landscape that the contour of the music follows.
And we confuse ourselves as living organisms which are one with this whole universe. So what is our purpose? Each is an individual. Our image, but in one important way, they're all of us.
This then leads round into a tape stop, followed by the start of the next track and final track of the album, Infantile. The album finishes as it began, wasting no time before surprising the listener with a punchy guitar riff which the bass and drums build from. Infantile may be the most anthemic of all the songs from Ode to the Author, having been in the works since the trio's time in ChasinJade. It really encapsulates, over the song's 10-minute runtime, the essence of Toska's unique songwriting style, which would be shared again over the next few years. The dynamic fluidity of the band's songwriting is showcased heavily in this track, which ebbs and flows and really paints the image of our character's struggle. The final build of the album leads up until the unison cymbal choke and final chorus before finally mellowing back out into an open pad of reverb. In the time following the release and success of Ode to the Author, the trio released 2 more EPs, centered on one with Dorje and Ode to the Author Live with Toska. Rabea, Ben and Dave would then spend the next year touring and working on music primarily with Toska, as well as making YouTube videos detailing the process. They would soon announce they were working on their first full-length studio release entitled Fire by the Silos. This album would be the first release not produced by the band themselves, and instead the band enlisted the services of Mark Roberts, who had worked on albums with Black Peaks, Delta Sleep and the Physics House Band, among others. They also tracked everything live at Middle Farm Studios, utilising their amazing live room to craft a sound that would better reinforce the music's anthemic and dystopian theme. Similarly with Ode to the Author, the release of Fire by the Silos would be accompanied by a near hour-long documentary detailing the band's time in the studio with Mark Roberts, recorded between September and December 2017. The album would be released to the public on the 2nd of November 2018, and with it music videos for 2 of the songs. This would be Toska's main mark on the musical landscape, exploring even deeper the dystopian soundscape over the album's 64-minute runtime. In support of the album, Toska launched on their first headline tour across Europe and would continue playing shows for the next few years. They would play the biggest gig in the band's history at Download Festival 2019, which had been a dream of the band since they were just teenagers. Heading into 2020, the band had begun recording a single entitled Leave No Meat on the Bones with Mark Roberts, as well as planning a headline tour, but these would never see the light of day due to the COVID-19 global pandemic in March 2020, which meant that all work with the band would be halted. This left each band member to work on their own projects for the foreseeable future. Rabea had released 2 solo albums in previous years and released a 3rd installment entitled Grinding Gears Volume 3 in December 2020. Ben had continued to work on Musicism, releasing a guitar course featuring Rabea and a producing course featuring Dave. He had also spent time looking after his family and welcoming some new additions to it. Around this time, Ben announced his departure from Dorje, citing a lack of progress with the band in recent years, as well as his own personal situation, meaning that he would rather not spread himself too thin over multiple avenues. On the 12th of August 2021, Toska officially announced their breakup. The band posted an announcement onto their social media platforms saying, "Like many bands, over the last couple of years we have been presented with a lot of challenges. The most important thing for us has always been to be healthy and happy before anything else, and as a result we don't feel we can continue with Toska in the same capacity anymore without compromising those principles." This left many fans and listeners confused and without answers, and they are yet to elaborate as to why the band needed to break up so suddenly. For this video, I had requested each member of the band to partake in an interview over email and direct message on Instagram. I didn't receive an answer from Rabea or Dave, and Ben was unable to fit it into his schedule. As such, I don't have any further comment for the future of the band, or if we will ever get to hear the single they recorded in March 2020. The only thing we know for certain is that Toska isn't going to be doing anything as a trio for the foreseeable future, but we will have music from Rabea and his new project The Totemist featuring Black Peaks drummer Liam Kearley, whose debut EP 2880 was released in May 2021, and we will have new courses from Ben on Musicism to look forward to, so here's to the future. I've included a reference list in the description of the video for further reading or viewing into any sources I included. Thank you for watching, and be sure to support Rabea, Ben and Dave in any future ventures they engage in, because they provided us with great music over the past decade, so it's only fair that we return the favour if we enjoy their music.
I presume you've ever seen I was trying to rebel against someone who continues